All right. So, Stacy, how has the day been? Give us a good story from today.
Oh, well, today was an amazing day because I got to say something that I haven't said in forever. So, for those of you who are watching, for those of you who are listening, Justin and I are doing a weight loss resistance protocol on me to get the systems of my body to work better. My body loves to put on muscle, but really loves to hold on fat like it's his best friend. And so we're working on this. So I'm doing a different training regimen. And really, through the First Form app is their bodybuilding program. And I've never trained this way before. So I've never used an easy curl bar. Like, so you guys need to know, like, I'm a free weight. Give me a kettlebell and a barbell, and like my life is full of joy. But some of these things in this bodybuilding program, like these are machines I've never touched. I'm like, is this machine? Because I've just never trained this way before. So I'm walking around the gym looking for an easy curl bar, and I literally with this in my hands. I'm like, never touched one of these before. And nobody was around to be like, that's what she said or anything like that. And it was just me alone in a gym with this wiggly bar going, what do I do with this? And I knocked it out. And it's still cool that you can still learn new things and have new experiences when you've been in gym training life for the last 15 years. You can still walk in and be like, never touched one of those before. So it's kind of fun. It's also weird to hold. It feels weird. I'm like, can I go grab the one that's
But
straight and not curvy?
because of the zigzag in it.
Yeah, I'm like, where do you put your hands? What do I do with my hands? Do I go on this curve, on that curve? Like, then boobs get in the way, and I'm like, there was I anyway, it worked great. The biceps felt everything that they needed to feel. What did you get to do today?
So I went to jujitsu. It's been the only time this week so far. I'm actually still in my rash guard, but the today was a different professor from another location, and so if you don't go to jiu-jitsu, we call the teachers professor. Anyway, a different professor from a different location, and so he's pretty straightforward. I think he's kind of a former MMA guy because he's got both cauliflower ear in both ears.
Mm.
So he's pretty kind of like he's a good teacher, right? But he's pretty like straightforward, and he's not like super emotional. He teaches it like he needs to teach it, and he's very open too. Like, hey, if this works for you, put it in your. This is what he says. If it works for you, put it in your front pocket. If it doesn't work for you, put it in your back pocket because you might need it one day. Okay, cool, like that. So
We're gonna steal that. We're gonna make that ours. He
I like
never needs to know.
it's okay. He won't listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
So in the midst of it, we learn the techniques, we do some drilling and stuff like that. And then we have like, 4 or 5 minute rounds. And at the 1 minute break, you switch partners. So I had switched a couple times and I ended up with no partner. And so he was like, all right, we're rolling. So now I'm literally rolling with the professor. And when I'm telling you, this dude feels like a imagine if like a gorilla had like suction cups on his body. So like he's literally attached to you with all of his weight, and there's not really a whole lot you can do to fight. Like it's just like, and I even started in like quote unquote like advantage positions, right? In some way, shape, or form. Like started inside control or whatever. Didn't matter, and so that's just the difference in rolling with a black belt. When you think you know what you're doing in general, and like you think you know just how to defend yourself, and there's just like times I'm like, dude, I have no options. There are zero ways out here. I'm just getting suffocated. I don't know what my left arm's doing. I don't know what my right arm's doing. You know what I mean? At one point, I shit you not. At one point, he had I was on my back. He had his legs clamped on either side of my legs. My legs are straight, like I'm laying in a fucking coffin. He had his legs clamped around my legs and one arm kind of like one shoulder out, like he was getting ready to put a Kimura on me, and like this arm was kind of stuffed. And I didn't like. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I can't move my hips. I can't move my legs. He was just like hammered down on me, and I'm like, dude. And he like literally, it's not a. I mean, he was breathing, but it wasn't like he was actually exerting like a shit ton of effort. And it's crazy. That's really what it is to be in contact with somebody who's a master at the art. He's truly a master at the art. And I'm sure there's people that, that would beat him, sure, but it's just like when you're at such a low level, you don't know what you don't know, and then you find yourself in a position and you're like, I don't even understand how I got here in the first place, and I damn sure don't know how to get out of it. So,
remember Danny, the day that you were rolling here, Danny came and saved our life that day. There was a day that Justin was here and we were rolling together, and Justin does know more than I am, but I do. But we were there going, okay, what do we do? And having fun, but really have no idea what we're doing. And Danny comes in, he's like, hey, let me help you too. And we're like, oh, Danny, like, thank you so much. So I went to go train today and at the gym, not jujitsu. I'm going to jujitsu tomorrow with Jonathan. So Danny's like, what are you doing? Do you come into jujitsu? I said, tomorrow on Friday, Danny, I'm coming. He's like, Stacy, that's tomorrow. I'm like, oh shit, tomorrow is Friday. Yeah, I'm going to be there. And he's like, well, that's what you say. I said, listen, Danny, I need to break this 4-year white belt streak. I've been a white belt for 4 years. Like, I have been training jujitsu inconsistently, Justin, for 4 years. And I'm like, eventually I'm going to get a stripe. Eventually I'm going to get enough reps in here that we're actually going to make some progress here at jiu-jitsu. And Danny straight looks at me and he's like, Stacy, I got my blue belt in 10 months. And I'm like, Danny, shut up. Shut up, Danny. And he's like, well, if you train 5 days a week, Stacy. I'm like, Danny, go away. Go away. And so like he kind of followed me into the gym a little bit and was just giving me a hard time. And when I was leaving, he's like, I'll see you tomorrow. I said, yeah, I'm getting one step closer to that 4-year blue belt. Just one step closer to the 4-year blue belt, which really leads us into like what we're talking about today is what are you aiming at? That's really kind of what Justin and I wanted to talk about this morning is without knowing what you're aiming for, you have no reason to organize or master yourself on any level. So where do you want to start, Justin?
well, I like the transition because you're right. I mean, up to now for you, and even definitely now for me, jiu-jitsu is not something that I aim at. It's not something that I seek to master. It is useful. I enjoy doing it, but it is not currently in this environment in my life, trying to build a business, trying to increase the quality of my relationships, things of that nature. Like, I can't do everything. And could I squeeze in, one more time a week to go to jiu-jitsu? Probably. But I like slack in the system. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for slack in the system just simply because of the travel distance, right? It's at least a 20-minute trip there and a 20-minute trip back. And, it takes, it's literally basically a 2-hour block of time in my day that I have to account for. So that being said, I don't have a reason to organize or master myself in that degree, in that arena. And I do it more for mental clarity to learn something different, right? But I have no desire in there right now. But again, it's kind of one of those back pocket things. I do it to not be too rusty at it so that one day when I do have time and energy and effort to get in there, I can do it. It's kind of like getting a degree in school. It doesn't matter if it takes you 3 years or 8 years, right? Like, at the end of the day, the piece of paper says your name and it says what you went to school for, right? It's kind of like a blue belt. Once you're a blue belt, nobody knows if it took you 6 years or 6 months, right? So it's just, it is what it is. It's just kind of this self, it's things we tell ourselves. But like you said, if you don't know what you're aiming at, you have no reason to gather yourself, make a plan, start to understand some of how your internal thoughts help you or hinder you in that aim. And so without having something to aim for, you really don't have any way to personally develop, is the way that I see it.
I agree. And I think I like that you made that a really good point that, we can't do everything. Each of us together we have priorities, and then individual we have priorities. And so when it comes to jujitsu, no, it has not. I've been doing other things the last 4 years. And I think, would I even be doing jujitsu now if it didn't improve my relationships? Like for me right now, I wouldn't do jujitsu right now unless there were relationships involved. It's one of the things that I love that you and I get to do together. It's kind of a fun little playful thing of Chase, even though you're so much better than I love to think that at some point, like I even stand a chance against you, but I don't. Like when you were explaining the gorilla with suction cups, I'm like, have you rolled with you? Like I felt your whole weight against my body, friend. It kind of feels like a gorilla with suction cups. Maybe not to that extent as that black belt, but I'm like, have you had all of your weight on your own body, Justin Carroll? I've totally been smashed by you.
It felt like it today.
But it's one of the things that I love that we get to do together, and getting to train with my son is one of my favorite things to do. Training with you and training with my son are my favorite people to train with. And one of my best friends, I mean, they own the gym, is there, and we don't get to see each other that often. So for me right now, though I love the practice of it and want to be so much better at it, the aim for me is really relational. And if I was going to say like, hey, what's my target, that really comes down to improving my quality of life and more time. That's the thing that I want to shoot for. So as we kind of get into this episode, like I want to ask people what would improve their lives that they're not currently good at. So where would you take that next?
So just to reiterate, most things, individual things, right? It could be getting better at an instrument. It could be learning a sport. It could be whatever, something that's more artistic or something that's more technical. It doesn't really matter. Most things come down to improving the quality of life or giving yourself more time, right? Or at least better time, better use of your time. And because most aims come down to that, it's like, okay, well, if we need to work backwards, what would improve your life that, like Stacey said, that you're not good at right now, or that you haven't practiced, but you can maybe see yourself being good at? Those are some general, easy questions, or simple questions anyway, that might help people to start walking themselves down that mental road. Because again, part of this is imagination, right? Nothing has happened yet. So you kind of have to put out a little bit of a vision. You have to walk yourself down that, or pull on that thread, as I like to call it. And that's why people write things down, right? What would the SWOT analysis of this be? You know what a SWOT analysis is?
Like the SWAT team?
No. So a SWOT analysis, I know what the S and the W stand for. It's SWOT. SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Oh.
And yep. And it is what scientists do when they form an experiment or any type of like trial. They're going through some semblance of the template of a SWOT analysis, SWOT. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I'm using that as a technical example to say you could use that tool, but to say when you're trying to figure out what you're aiming for, you may walk yourself through this little like imaginary journey of what would it look like if I did this. And so then you can kind of start to get this like little bit of a feeling, even though you haven't done anything yet, of, okay, what would that look like in real life? And you can start to work on some more practical steps after that. So for example, I wanted to learn how to play guitar this year. I decided that was going to be one of my New Year's resolutions. I didn't really care what it looked like. I just knew that I had a guitar that my parents bought me back when I was a teenager, and it's just been collecting dust, and I just want to learn how to play guitar, right? I don't have a reason necessarily. So I kind of sat and thought just very briefly, what would that actually look like in my day-to-day life? Well, to me, the easy version of that is just picking up the guitar and doing some type of drill with the guitar, right? Playing a chord, switching chords, whatever it is. So I downloaded an app. That was the next practical step I thought in my mind, right? And off we went. And so I'm just giving you that story to say, It's a lot less complicated than you think it has to be. You think that you have to go A to Z, when really you just have to go A to B. It's like, I'm currently not doing this thing. So what would be the next best step? Well, the next best step, if you want to learn how to play a guitar and you don't have a guitar, is to go buy a guitar. And I know that sounds like duh, but I mean, you got to go through step one before you get to step two. So don't underestimate the ability for you to just go through this semblance of a plan, because you're going to already be shifting yourself towards, in your mind, having the thing that you want, not planning to have the thing that you want, right? So that being said, you still want to talk about how we're pursuing that quality of life right now, Stacey?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, because now it's public. Now we're a couple weeks in. Like, what have we literally done to improve the quality of our life in the recent future? Well, the recent past and the future.
So, well, yeah, on a big picture level, right? We started a business together. If you don't know, if you're on this podcast and you don't know yet, Stacey and I have joined forces and created Fortify Health Coaching LLC. No advice that we give. We're not doctors or therapists. We don't play one on the internet. So no advice that we give is intended for that. Please consult with your physician. So now that that's out of the way. Yeah, gotta get those disclaimers in there, man. But we started a business as our aim. Okay, so it's a thought that we had in our head, and we did some we dipped our toe in the water. We started coaching a couple people together. You know, there were some things that had happened kind of preliminary to this is the thing that we're going to do. We didn't just get together one day and was like, hey, guess what? Let's go file for an LLC, right? Go ahead.
No, we did not.
It was
no, we absolutely did not.
It was a lot of pre-contemplation, right? But we didn't start a business for the purpose of starting a business. We started a business because we want more sovereignty in our life. And what I mean by that is we want the ability to be free. And that means financially free. That means schedule-wise. That means relationally. You know, we want to be able to do what we want with who we want, where we want, when we want, right? Within the bounds of our relationship. And personally, right? Our relationship with each other and our relationship with our spouses and our family and all that kind of stuff. So we are actually aiming at sovereignty. We're aiming at the ability to set our own rules, right? When we did that, we had to start somewhere, because if you don't start somewhere, you'll end up, if you don't know what you're doing if you don't know what you're reaching for when you start, you'll end up somewhere that you didn't intend to end up. I will say 100%. That. Okay. Even if it's very kind of fuzzy, because you got to start walking down that road to kind of know what it might look like. So a practical tool to do that is a vision board. So Stacey and I created a virtual vision board for a combination of what we wanted the business to look like and what we wanted our personal lives to look like because of that, right? What we wanted the things that we wanted to create, like what are the fruits that we want to see from this experience, right? So that's the first thing we did, was create a vision board. What struck you about the vision board, Stacey?
Well, I think it's really important. I'm going to take this back for a second, because I laughed when Justin said we just didn't wake up one day and be like, hey, let's make an LLC. This actually started almost a year ago with just an idea. And then we were like, hey, let's test this out. That when you're looking at taking aim at something and mastering it, it really starts with something small. If you know Justin and I at all very well, and if you're just getting to know us, it's not that we're afraid to make big moves, but both of us are really conservative in the moves that we make, because we want everything to be course correctable. Right. So it's in the way that we coach. It's in the way that we live our lives. And so some people will look at me like, well, especially when it comes to me, like, oh my gosh, she's makes such bold moves. She takes huge risks. Yeah, that's a little bit true. But there was a lot of calculation and strategy that happened before the moves anybody sees me make. So if you're watching Justin and I and be like, oh my gosh, they made this strategic big move. It was sudden. It was all of this. I'm like, well, really, we've been toying with this idea for a year. And then we tested it. And then we tested it. And then we tested it. And then when Life Guy gave us the opportunity to transition, we're like, hey, let's go. So if you would have asked us a year ago what our vision was, it's very different than the vision board we came up with this week. And I think it's important to share with you guys what our vision is, because it tells you not only what we're aiming for, but who we are. And so for vision boards, for some people like, ooh, woo, woo, vision boards. But I will tell you this from a physical practice. Where you look is where you will go. Like wherever your eyes are focused at is where the trajectory of your life will go. I learned this mountain biking. The first time I went mountain biking, we were on a cliff and the river was down beneath me. And my coach, she was my first coach, Kiele, if you're listening, I love you. And one day you and Justin are going to meet and you can tap him and it'll be the best day ever. She's a black belt, by the way. And so she's like, Stacy, don't look anywhere but where you want the bike to go. If you look to the left, the bike's going to go left. If you look to the right, your bike's going to go right. You need to stay on the trail and just look ahead. You have to aim. So like, because I was terrified of going off this cliff. I didn't go off the cliff, obviously. So in this vision board is the things that Justin and I said, hey, this is where our aim is, not for just us professionally, but really what we want for our families. And so it might come to a surprise, I think to some people, what we actually had on there. Because if people haven't made one, I think you totally should, so that you can aim at where you're going and master it. But of what we had on ours. So what were two things, Justin, that you had on there that you want to share that might be helpful to somebody?
Sure. So one of the more, I guess, normal things, I guess nothing's normal when it comes to a vision board, but one of the, I guess, typical things would be something that I wanted to get for Paige, because she's always wanted this as long as we've, been married essentially. But like a new car for her. And she's never really had that experience. Like, again, it's been mostly like cars that parents have got, none of them new. And, we haven't, as a couple, been able to purchase a car together type of experience. So partly because of the experience, but partly because she, has a very particular vision of the kind of vehicle that she wants. So put that on there. Another one that stuck with me was the family experiences picture. Again, this is basically a virtual collection of images. If for people who, doesn't matter, we're not showing it on the screen right now or anything, but it's a virtual collection of images. So the image that I'm talking about is a family, like mom and dad, they're holding hands, kids are holding their hands, one kid's, being held, whatever. And it's kind of like a silhouette of them, and they're kind of overlooking this, mountainous type of feature, outdoor feature, and there's a sunset, right? So the image conjured up feelings of family time, strong social bonds, things of that nature. And so that's one of the things that I want to be able to create more of in the future. And this is why we decided to start our own business, is because, hey, like, if we want to take a trip every quarter, then cool. Let's create the systems and create the environment in which we can make that happen. So that was a couple for me.
I love that. And I think that you said something really important about our vision might be different than yours. Like when Justin and I decided, hey, we want to do this, it reminds me of a conversation we had with a client yesterday. And Justin actually made a post about it yesterday of really enjoying the people that we get to work with. There was a time that, and he shared about his experiences about when he didn't always get to work with people that he enjoyed work with. And there's a time, especially when you're new in an industry, that you just kind of take the licks, you get the reps in, you get what's handed to you until you have some success, until you have some notoriety, you have some experience. And then you get to the point where you're like, this is what I want. And this is who I want to work with. And we're at the point right now where we can say, like, this is who we want to work with. And we get to do that. We get to leave every conversation being like, this is somebody we could go have coffee with and to be a part of our clients' lives in that way, that is such a transformative experience for them, is so rewarding. And at the end of our day yesterday, I said to Justin, I'm like, our work should be that our spouses are better because of the work that we do. Like at the end of our workday,
Yeah.
like my husband and his wife should be like, oh my God, I love your workday because of what it produces in us, rather than, oh, work. And not that we're not going to have challenging days. We're not naive to that. But if we take aim at the vision of what we want, then we're much more likely to hit it. I had two on there that are a little bit different than his, and we'll get to it. So, because there's so much we want to cover today, this will probably be a 2-part episode. That for me, one of the main reasons that I wanted to have something of our own was I want to retire my husband. Like, that man has worked his ass off for our family for 25 years. I don't know if my husband actually knows how not to work. Rest is going to be a challenge for him, but he has this dream of this snack pretzel shop, this nostalgic place of getting to be able to talk to people and make these gourmet bougie pretzels. And somehow I got roped into making cupcakes again. After one trip with my husband, Justin, I'm making cupcakes again between you and him. And I want to give that to him. I want to give him the thing that he's worked so hard on for our family, and give him back a season of something he just gets to purely enjoy without thought at all. And that's going to be number one. Number two, and Justin actually called me out on this a little bit because I even went a little bit small on my vision, is that I want each of my children to have a business. I want them to be their own entrepreneurs and be their own bosses. And so I told him, I said, I want to be like an investor for my kids. And you went on and said, do you want to be an investor or do you want to be the investor? And I was like, and that's kind of the beauty of our friendship, of like, he knew what I actually wanted, but I didn't say it. And not often will I play a little bit small, but that moment I did. And I do. Like, I want to be the investor in whatever my kids want to do. And so hopefully that's helpful for you guys in hearing some frameworks of how to do it. But what you focus on is really what you see, for good or for bad. But if you don't take aim at something, you're not going to master it. The other piece that we were talking about is like the quality of life, but also the quality of your time. So what have we done? Because both of us are doing this a little bit differently. How are we improving the quality of our life right now?
So this comes from a more practical example, right? So we kind of took this big thing, starting a business, and showed you how we started stepping in that right direction. And there are all kinds of daily activities and weekly things that we do to step towards that vision, but that's not really things that we think are pertinent here. But on a smaller scale, on a more individual level, because obviously, we can't do the things we want without being the people that we want to be, or having the bodies that we essentially need to be able to operate with. We're both doing a little bit of a different dietary protocol right now. And when I say different, I mean different than your kind of typical what you would consider a diet, or typical what you consider tracking macros, or I don't know what you consider typical, because everybody's going to come to this podcast with a different point of view. But right now I've taken a stool test, and what a stool test does is essentially, you put your poop in a little container and send it off, and they come back to you and say, hey, this is what's going on inside the gut, right? Like, this is what we can tell about the bacteria, about the inflammation levels, about the, do you have a parasite? Do you have, dysbiosis in your gut, or like leaky gut? Again, these are all just general terms, but essentially it came down to, hey, there's some inflammation there. There's some higher numbers in them that we need to handle. It would be like if you got, your blood results, so like your blood test back, and you had high cholesterol. And like, hey, you got high cholesterol. We need to be able to handle this amount. Okay, cool. So I've waited about a month to do this because I had some things going on in February. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put this off for a month. So shame on me, but we're fully in it now. And they call it an elimination diet, but essentially it's just a lesser inflammatory food plan. Essentially, it's kind of how I think about it. So elimination diet sounds very strict. Like it sounds like you're probably just eating ice cubes for dinner, right? That's what it kind of makes me think of. But what it means is the elimination of the common irritants for most people, right? This is going to be things like corn and dairy and red meat and eggs and cheeses, some nuts and seeds and oils and artificial sweeteners, things like that. And again, this is not intended for anybody to go out and advise do this. I'm being guided by a functional medicine practice to do this, right? Now, this is also the nature of things that Stacy and I do. This is just how they do it at their practice, right? But the point there is I'm taking myself on a little bit of a different journey because I want this. It has nothing to do with aesthetics. It has nothing to do with calories. It has nothing to do with losing weight. Again, I hesitate to even call it a diet because it's not about dieting in the sense. It's a diet in the sense that it's a food plan. And so I'm just going through this journey right now to help improve the quality of my internal environment, of my gut, of my GI tract, so that ultimately I can be able to do the things I want. So when I come in, you'll like this, Stacy. I don't think I've told you this, but when you come in as a new patient to any practice, right, they're going to give you an intake and they're going to say, what are you doing here? Like, what do you want to do? Especially at a functional medicine practice, because you're not going there because you're sick. You're going in there because you're trying to get more well. You're trying to get something out of yourself, right? Usually you're not sick when you go in there. So one of my goals was to still be able to outrun my son when I'm 50. And
I love this.
The doctor is himself approaching 50 and has, boys that are not quite teenagers yet, but somewhere close. And he was like, man, I really like that goal. That's something solid to shoot for. So, the gut test, the elimination diet, all that stuff. Yeah, it's great because I like it as a practitioner. Like, this is kind of what I do in my coaching practice as well. Although I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on the internet, but I still say, hey, let's look at your gut. Let's see if we can heal some things. Excuse me. We don't heal. Let's see if we can support some things so that we can get the outcomes that you want, right? The point was not because of the gut. The point was because I know that in 20 years, sorry, when I am 50, that I want to be able to do certain things. And this is just one step in that direction, right? So it's the sovereignty that I'm looking for. It's the freedom to be able to, beat my son's ass in a foot race in the next 20 years that I'm looking for, not some short-term, calorically restricted outcome.
I love that. And I freaking can't wait to see that. Him as a teenager and you chasing after him. Like, sorry, he's going to be chasing after you. That was the goal. You weren't going to be chasing after him. He's going to be chasing you. You'll still be in front. I'm so here for that. I'm going to hand this back to you because you articulate what we're doing with me so much better than I do. You have such great language, and I think we will do a whole separate podcast on me and my journey and what we're navigating. But when you talked about like, hey, this isn't necessarily for an aesthetic, and Justin even used me as like a case study earlier today in where we get all our education from, is that I too completely shifted everything that I'm doing to support the systems of my body for living a life that was completely filled with inbound stressors for the last 15 years. And so now we're navigating things where my body was putting on muscle really easily. Like I can do that easily, but it doesn't lose fat well. So in the same way that Justin's doing a protocol to support his future self of sovereignty, we're doing the same thing. But because you say it better, will you explain a little bit more of what we're doing and why?
Sure. So if you haven't figured this out by now, I'm Stacy's coach. I started as Stacy's coach and I'm still Stacy's coach. Well, in certain ways I'm her coach, and in other ways she's my coach. So we trade off pretty well. But Stacy is experiencing what we're now coming to call in the health and fitness industry weight loss resistance. And you're not going to see a whole lot about that out there just because it's a very new term. Some people still don't call it that. They kind of think it's fake, whatever you want to call it, right? She has the inability to lose weight like a normal person would. Okay. Like she would have to be on some stupid amount of low calories or some crazy stuff to be able to do it in the traditional way. So essentially, what we've done with Stacy is we've figured out that she needs her glucose is too high, her blood sugar is too high. It rides, consistently too high throughout the day. So we started measuring that. And one of the ways that we needed to do that was to help support that was to get her into a calorie deficit. So we have her eating, less. Let me back up. We fed her up for quite some time before this. So we have her eating less calories than she needs right now so that she can lose the weight. But more specifically, we're having her doing it in a ketogenic method. So we are actually measuring ketones. So when I say ketogenic, I don't mean like she's eating, bacon and cheese because she just wants to eat more fat and less carbs. She's literally measuring her blood glucose. She's measuring her blood ketones. And we're trying to get an effect with the ketogenic state because it's a body state. It's not a diet. Okay. The ketogenic state of using those for fuel, ketones for fuel, in order to allow her cellular metabolism to burn fat for fuel. She's basically, for lack of better terms, through the stressors over the last 10 to 15 years and the lack of any attention to the food that she's consuming and the training here and there has gotten her body into a state where her cells are basically, for lack of a better term, just sugar burning, right? Which is why she was just hanging out with high blood glucose for no apparent reason, right? Really, for no apparent reason, because we had dieted prior to this. And so all that to say, we're using the ketogenic method in order to help force those cells to learn how to use fat for fuel. And so then we can actually bring her out of that ketogenic state, right? We're going to do it in a more of like a 4 weeks on 1 week refeed type of situation, so that she can actually go and live a normal life, right? She does want to be able to be free. She does want to be able to lose weight. She does want to be able to eat what she wants to do within reason and all that kind of stuff. But it takes some untangling of the prior body's environment, because all it knew was to burn sugar because she's been stressed to some degree for the last decade, right? No idea of how to consume appropriately for that stress, right? Or train appropriately or recover appropriately, right? So there's a lot of facets to this, but from a dietary standpoint, that's what we're doing in the most, simplistic way I know to understand it. And if you want to know more, then we would be happy to have a conversation with you elsewhere.
Which is why I just wanted to introduce it here, because hearing both of us doing a different diet, these are my air quotes if you're not watching, a dietary protocol is very different in the industry, right? This is, both of us are looking at the future versions of us and who we want to be, and made a course. We took aim somewhere differently and are mastering it so we can have the life that we want. Like if I didn't want to, actually wrote about it today, compete with my son one day, like as an American Ninja Warrior. I don't need to be lighter. I could just hang out here. That's fine. Like my husband thinks I'm hot as hell. Like there's no problems in our marriage, like physically, that we're not attracted to. I could just hang right here at this body weight, but does it support the freedom I have to go play and run and do things with my kids? No, it doesn't. And so when everything for us, when you hear it, is going to come back to freedom. So we made these targeted aims to improve the quality of our life and our time. So if we were going to give people like protocols, what do you do next? Like you figured out where you want to go, you want to master it. What are the principles that you and I have kind of adopted, so to speak, to be able to execute? And we just shared one little piece of our lives, like for the sake of the time of a podcast, because Justin and I could go on this for hours of other areas of our lives that we're taking aim at as well. Like what are the principles that we would give to be like, hey, if you need somewhere to start here?
Yeah. So like Stacy said, lots of layers to the aims that we have right now on a big and small level. But if you want to get started and you know in a general direction that you want to go, right? Let's say that you've created a vision board, and let's say that you've walked backwards from that goal and kind of said, okay, what do I need to do tomorrow? Right? When I wake up tomorrow, I need to do X thing. And the principle that I use for habit development for myself and for my clients is the goal is no 0 days. And what that means is never let yourself get to zero momentum. Do something every day that's going to contribute to that aim. Okay. It could be a very specific thing, like a very specific habit, like drinking, 100 ounces of water. Or it could be if the aim is to develop, a healthy lifestyle. And I know that's a little bit vague, so you're going to have to be more specific if you want to create a specific behavior. But the point of no 0 days is I'm never letting a day go by where I didn't do anything to improve that outcome. Okay. So from a training standpoint, right, let's say that you don't train every day, and it's okay if you don't, but you should probably move your body in some way every day. That could be mobilizing or yoga, or going for a walk, or going surfing if you like to surf, or snowboarding if you like to snowboard, or playing basketball, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can move your body. So this is where you're going to have to think a little bit more creatively about the habit that you're trying to develop of, really it's less of a habit and more of a character trait or a personality that you're trying to develop. And that's why no 0 days is important. It's not that the specifics aren't necessarily important, but the carrying of momentum is the important part. That's why no 0 days is a principle that we like to live by.
I'm going to add to that. So if you've got your no 0 days, you actually have to commit to something. Like, you have to commit to something. Like, if we're going to take aim, you can't just be like willy-nilly. Like, one day I'm going to the left, the next day I'm going to the right, because you won't master anything if you're not legitimately committing to something. And I think a lot of times we see in the clients that we work with, like, they're so afraid to get to commit to something, which we will absolutely get to on the second part of this podcast. But that's why it comes back to vision at the beginning. You can course correct along the way, but once you've got momentum, test it out a little bit. Like, I think if there's anything we could both say is that we see people give up too quick because they didn't see what they wanted at the beginning. I think about like you with the guitar right now. Like, it's imperfect, right? There was like, what was it, one day last week? You're like, oh my God, that's right. I haven't touched it in like how long? You're like, thank you for reminding me. So I'd love for you to pick up there, like in being okay with it being imperfect and still moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I can give a real easy example, and I don't know if you probably can't see this even if you're watching, right? But I have a little tiny calendar here, and there's January, February, March. You are the only ones that have circles on them. You can see in January there's a lot of circles, and in February there's not a whole lot of circles, right? And March just started, so we're starting pretty good in March. But the point I'm trying to make is I circled the day if I picked up the guitar, if I picked it up, played a couple chords, or I did something to help me get better at playing the guitar. Okay. Well, in January, it was great. It was like, what is this? 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, probably 15 days out of the month. I did it in January. Okay. In February, I did it 5 that I circled. So if I've missed a circle, might have missed a circle or 2. So let's say that maximum of 7 days, but I definitely did it less than 10. Okay. So, and I'm already at 5 as it stands in March, and we're only on the 7th, right? So the point that I'm trying to, the piece I'm trying to add to Stacy's point is, this doesn't look pretty. There's nothing straightforward or linear about me learning how to play the guitar right now. But because I'm not overly focused on that it has to be a certain way, and I have to do it at a certain time and for a certain amount of time, and for a certain method, would I get there faster if I had constraints? Probably so. But because it's not a essential piece of what's like what's on my vision board. It's really just, it's what allows me to kind of decompress from other things, and it teaches me a new skills. And I like the pliability of my brain to be able to learn new skills. That's how I treat it. I treat it with the importance that I put on it when I set the aim. Okay. And so my point is, yes, I'm committed to learning how to play the guitar. That doesn't change. But the ability to let myself fall flat on my face and have weeks where I didn't pick it up at all is, I try to avoid that, but I'm okay if that happens, because I know there's always tomorrow, right? There's always the next day. There's always the next opportunity to do it. So it's not that you didn't do it. It's that when is the next opportunity to do it, and how soon can you create that opportunity? And that's what being perfectly okay with being imperfect looks like, because you're not going to have all good days. Matter of fact, most of your days are only going to be decent. They're not going to be necessarily what you would describe as a good or a great day. And you're even going to have some bad days. The way that I like to explain this to people is this: if you are planning on training 3 days a week, okay, how many good training sessions, like I really knocked it out today, are you going to have in a month? My argument is that you might have 4. You might have 4 in a month. 6 if you're doing well. Okay. So that's 3 days a week, 4 weeks in a month. That's 12 training sessions, right? If we're going to average that out, that's 12 training sessions. And I'm telling you that a quarter of those are going to be good, like I knocked it out today training sessions. Here's the reason why. The law of averages tell us most of them are just going to be okay. You're going to go in there and you're going to be like, I did what I needed to do. I don't feel necessarily like I knocked it out. I don't necessarily feel like it was a shitty day either. I feel good about it. Right. And again, this changes as you've been lifting weights longer or whatever. But my point is this: the reason that we give people more frequency of behaviors is because the likelihood that you're going to have actually good days on those behaviors is actually pretty low. Okay. It's actually pretty low until you get to the point where it's a part of your lifestyle and you have a rhythm. And then you can start to develop the keen ability to pick out, oh, okay, this is why it wasn't so good today, right? This is why it's not. But when you're starting something, you don't know that. You don't know what you don't know. So you're just getting in the groove of doing the thing, right? Getting in the truck and driving to jiu-jitsu. That's my habit. I don't have to do anything special at jiu-jitsu, right? Because once I get there, I'm just going to be there and I'm going to do the thing and I'm going to come home, right? And I could improve that habit at any point that I choose. And I would walk through this process, but to not belabor it is saying, look, some days are going to be very orderly and some days are going to be very chaotic. How you performed in the session is not as important that you performed the session. Just do it, okay? And be okay with messing it up, being okay with being wrong about it, be okay with missing a day, because it's not about what you did today or yesterday or tomorrow. But when I look back in the end of March and at the past 90 days, or at the 90-day mark from the beginning of the year, whenever that is, and I say, how many days have I practiced the guitar in 90 days? I can look at my percentage and look at like, okay, where am I at? Do I need to do more? Do I need to do about the same? Something like that, right? I recruited the use of a habit tracking app to help me kind of develop a little bit more consistency, because I could see that in February, the whole experiment was you weren't very consistent, right? So the point being, if you can continue to have some momentum, if you can continue to commit to a behavior, a facet that you're trying to improve, and you can be perfectly okay with being imperfect, because the job of perfect is already taken. Okay. That you can develop something almost with ease. Doesn't mean it's going to be short. Doesn't mean you're going to do it tomorrow, but you can do it almost with ease. And you know what? You might actually even enjoy it a little bit.
I actually love that. And I will tell you that it was yesterday. Did I text you? It was either yesterday or the day before that I was at the gym and I freaking killed it. And it surprised the shit out of me. And I texted Justin. I was like, what is happening? What are we doing? Like, why am I able to pull this load right now? Like, I don't understand, because it wasn't my expectation as we are changing energy systems. As I was willing to lay down my strength. Like, to support the systems of my body so it could function better as a whole. I was willing to lay down my strength to do so. And we're finding that I didn't have to. So the other day I was like singing Alicia Keys, I Am Superwoman. And today I'm at the gym with a wiggly bar going, what the hell is this? Like all the movements felt awkward because they were new to me. And today was not a day at the gym that I felt like. So when you're talking about like, hey, some days are a little disappointing. Today was not a day that you got no text from me about my training today. If it wouldn't have come up in this conversation, nope, you would have never heard about today. It would have been a day we just let slide right on by because there was nothing remarkable. There was nothing special. It was just consistent imperfection. So before we wrap this up, I want you to give one more piece that we can leave people for if we're going to ask them like to really embrace the imperfectness and just show up. We know that imperfection is going to bring a little bit of chaos. Talk to them about ordering the chaos for a second.
So when you understand the principle of yin and yang, essentially, without getting too esoteric here, order and chaos, there's going to be
which of us is which?
right.
Which one of us is which?
Order or chaos?
Yeah. Which one is the yin and which one is the yang?
We'll just let everybody have their, form their own opinions. We won't put that in their head. But when you're trying to create a little bit of order in the chaos, you have to separate yourself just a little bit. You have to detach just a little bit from the thing that you're pursuing in order to see, kind of see the 10,000 foot view a little bit. And this is part of what me and Stacey teach people how to do in our coaching practice is using the spaces, the white space in your day and in your head. And I know that's hard to kind of conceptualize, but using that white space to take a little bit of a breather and to go, man, things just seem very like the sky is falling down right now. Things seem very chaotic in my environment, right? Maybe there's a lot of things that came at you at once because life is going to life, right? Life's going to happen.
Life be lifing.
Life's a lot. Life's a life. And so when that happens is, okay, well, how do we pull ourselves out of staring down the barrel and kind of take our view a little bit more broad? And I mean, the best way that I know how to do this is to either write down some things that you're thinking about that you can't seem to get out of your head, some things that you keep marinating on so that you can actually trap them on paper and like read them like a book, right? So you can read them and go, okay, this is how I'm thinking about this. Is this right, wrong, and different, right? Is there something that this needs to be done, or is this just a worry that's kind of unfounded? Number two, and Stacey's better at this than I am in terms of the practice, but breathing in a way that settles your body so that you don't have this tension that's just slowly getting worse and worse and worse. But that would be some type of controlled breath work, right? Whether that's box breathing, like 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, something like that. I like a shorter version where it's like as much as you can get in, just a little bit more, right? Like a little sip past that, and then like a 6 to 8 second exhale, things of that nature. But those are the two things that come to my mind in terms of trying to create space so that you already know how to create order. You just don't have the space to do it right now.
The only thing I would add to that before we close is gratitude and stress can't exist in the same place. So it's just not the way the brain works. So if you've got a lot of chaos that you are trying to bring to order, that you're going to cultivate the opposite. Like whatever it is that is swirling quickly, like and not just trite, like what do you have to be thankful for? And I will end this with a story that I think we've told before, but I'm not 100% sure, is that about 18 months ago, Justin asked me if I was thankful for my experiences navigating foster care, adoption, a failed adoption, having a special needs kid, and all of the things, all of the advocacy, and all really the heartache and trauma that we endured, because it made me so good at my job. And when you asked me this 18 months ago, my answer was, I was spicy about it too. I think there was like a finger point. It was like, no, it's too soon. Like, don't ask me that. And it was 2 weeks ago, in the middle of such chaos, that I found myself advocating for people again. And I was like in tears, not because I was advocating, because a question that you would ask me 18 months prior, I was able to say, I am so thankful for everything that had happened until that point, because it really, because I wouldn't have been able to do what I did 2 weeks ago without those experiences. But for the first time, all of the pain of 15 years in a moment was like, I'm so thankful for this. And the chaos of that week, which was so much, was instantly brought to order because of gratitude. I'm never going to be the person that looks at your challenging, overwhelming, really painful life experiences and be like, oh, unicorns and rainbows, there's no shit on the wall. I'm not going to be that person. But if you can find something, even if it's the smallest thing, to be like, okay, I don't understand this yet, but I'm going to be super thankful for it. Like, and from a place of authenticity, not that like fake gratitude crap, that it brings chaos into order. Anything else you want to add before we leave the great people of the interweb today?
No, I think that's great. I think being able to say, like, where's the lesson in this situation? And you may not be able to come up with that answer right now, but I think if you ask the question, it's better than not. So, like I said, looking to be grateful for the skills that we now have because of the hard shit that we, because we had to clean shit off the walls more often than we wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. That type of thing. So that's where we'll leave this one. On the next episode, we'll give y'all some things about what to do when your momentum has stopped, right? When you've missed the mark, when you've made some mistakes, when you're afraid to take the next step because of one reason or another. That's the backside of this that, again, takes some depth to explain. So we want to give that to y'all next time. So for today, I think that's where we'll leave it, and we'll see y'all next time.